Beans, y'all. Let's get it.
Put your hands together. Put your hands together.
Yeah! What's up from across the pond? We're back on Calling All Beans. I got some substandard audio because my microphone's not here and I'm using AirPods. What y'all gonna do about it? Nothing. I'm your host, DJ, along with my illustrious co-host, because we're gonna tell you about who's playing hooky tonight. We're gonna get into that, but first, let me welcome in one of the OGs of this show, a researcher, your researcher du jour. She's about as dope as can be. She is Deb at A Study of UAPs, the host of Deb's Data Dojo.
Hello, everybody. Happy Saturday.
It's so nice to see you, Deb. Well, almost see you. We got to talk about a show we got upcoming, you, myself, and Leah, after this show. We're going to get into it. But before I do that, the aforementioned, the brilliant one, she's bright. All right? She just got off the slopes, so I know she's feeling good. She's probably trying to warm up. She's the new addition. Put your hands together for Leah. Prime time.
Hey, y'all. Thank you, as always, for having me. Happy Saturday.
Yeah, she's the new addition, baby. And now, you know what we got to do? We don't want to waste any kind of time and bring on our special guest this evening. You know, we like to do these CAB community episodes. You don't have to be a content creator. You don't have to be somebody famous. You don't have to be somebody with all kinds of gravitas. Although, let me tell you something, man. This gentleman right here resonates with a lot of people in the UFO community because he radiates positivity and light. Okay? He is somebody whom I met not long before the conference that we went to in New York City, put on by James Indoli and J.C. King. This brother right here is originally from Illinois, grew up in California, Illinois, and Virginia. He is a lifelong UFO enthusiast, 6 years active duty in the USAF. So that, y'all know that means he's my brother on a whole nother level, other than just that we love the phenomenon. He was active in Japan, Vegas. He is a family man, a carpenter. Mark Boyle and him need to talk. He's into music production. He currently works in corporate sales, and he graduated from Old Dominion University, Norfolk, Virginia. So party people, put those hands together for Corey Jacques Keel!
Woohoo!
Hey, Corey.
Amen from somebody.
Hey, man.
Leah, this is a good crowd. Thank you, DJ, Deb.
Look what I brought, man. Beautiful, awesome, smart people, man.
I'm a little intimidated anytime I see Leah on the line. She's extremely smart.
Dude, dude.
Hey, well,
unlike the other dunces here on CAB.
Thanks there, Corey. I'll remember that.
I have fabulous things to say about Deb as well, and she's a fellow Marylander as well. So
that's strike one, Corey. Don't try to get out of that. All right, you got two more. All right, no, all kidding aside, I'll bring the volume and temperature down. It is an honor to have you. We do like to bring people on who just have these really interesting perspectives on the phenomenon, and I've basically marketed this as, in this 60-minute block right here, Corey will explain to you everything that UFOs and the phenomenon are about, and you'll leave with just oodles of knowledge that you never had. You'll have no questions left.
I feel sorry for anyone that believes that.
Just kidding. No,
Wait, I told disclosure was happening today. Corey, you're not leading disclosure?
Yeah.
Man, DJ, I can't do this, man.
I'm out, man. I'm out.
This is the disclosure right here. This is it.
By the way, before we go any further, I just want to let people know, Money Nathan, the executive producer and technical director of this joint and co-conspirator, in the creation of Calling All Beings is with UFO thinker Frank, recording an episode today. I don't know what they're talking about, but I'm kind of excited about that. So we have 3 cabbies here and 2 over there. That's what's going down today. So Nathan, Frank, love you guys, and we'll see you soon. Now, let's get to it. Mr. Corey, man, you know, when I get on the phone with you, man, it's like fire, man, because you just like start coming up with things, man, and just start talking about these really grand things. It's just amazing nature of the universe type things. Is there something that is tickling? Let's see. When you're bald, this is easier because you can feel it more. That is tickling your brain right now.
You know, there usually is. It's like some kind of an affliction that I have, and I just can't put it down. Just can't put it down. It's always been there.
I love it. And you know what? Actually, I want to start with Deb because Deb had an idea. Deb wanted to get into you and find out your history, right, Deb? So let me pass it over to Deb so she can get into it.
Yeah, so obviously when we met, we gravitated towards each other. I don't know, like we just instantly were like, we know each other somehow. Like we're best friends. I don't know what it is. There's like an automatic thing. So, but we never got into your story and your history. And I know it's sort of awkward to say, let's do it right now on a podcast, but let's do it.
Let's do it. So where to start? So I've been really obsessed with the UFO phenomenon my entire life. As long as I can remember and as long as I could read, going back to kindergarten. My father was in the Navy, lived in the Bay Area. I was 5 years old. And for some odd reason, they wanted to put me from kindergarten into the first grade. When I was in the first grade, I met this lady who acted as a mentor for me and a tutor. Her name was Miss Pilar. And she, I guess, was an experiencer. So at 5 years old, I had a woman in authority, in a position of authority, just kind of confirmed for me that they were real. So throughout my life, it wasn't anything that I ever questioned. I always took it for granted that there was something being held back from us. So she set me off. And as a kid, I basically tried to watch, read, and listen to anything I could that had anything to do with UFOs. And not only UFOs, Bigfoot, NDEs, life.
Bigfoot?
Yeah. And then after you get into that, then you start getting into philosophy. Then you get into religion. And then you get into Gnosticism. And you just start going further and further. And then you come across genetics. So I'm kind of thankful for the phenomena because it's kind of afforded me this education in all of these, broad kind of topics.
Corey, when you talk about Gnosticism, I'm thinking of nitrous oxide, you use when you want to make your car go faster in concert with like a supercharger. Is that what Gnosticism is? So, and Leah probably has a lot on this, Leah. So Gnosis. So a lot of people will know that Gnosticism is, it's a belief system where the best way to say it is they look at the Old Testament as the demiurge. So the God that they were talking to in the garden was actually an oppressor. And the snake was there to liberate them, if you will, to give them the fruit so they could be like gods. So the Gnostics have a really different take on Christian theology, which I find really interesting. I'll tell you what, man, this brother is what I call learned. Lay it prime, man. Go for it.
Yes, that was. First of all, I'm totally on team Gnosticism in so many respects. So I'm delighted to hear that you were informed by this. Which actually leads me to my next question. I'm always really fascinated by the thinkers and books and media and philosophies that guide people to where they are. So Corey, can you tell us a little bit about what thinkers or works have been really formative for you?
Yeah, I would say, earlier in my life, one of my main interests was always motivational speaking. If you had asked me when I was 10 years old, 12, 15, 18, I would have said, I want to be a motivational speaker. And that's because I realized the power of word as a kid. I realized how people could walk out of a church have a completely different, perspective on what life was, and who they were. So a lot of the earlier motivational speakers like Zig Ziglar, Brian Tracy, Les Brown, Napoleon Hill. So they really informed me on, I guess you can say, like some of the new age thought. And that I realized that all these things kind of dovetailed, whether it was motivational speaking, spirituality and religion, and then the phenomenon. So, but I want to answer your question. So a couple of people that informed me, obviously Jacques Vallée, Jacques Keel, I actually had a list here. Sorry. Stanton Friedman. I would say Stanton Friedman, and I think most of us will remember when we were kids, Stanton Friedman was everywhere. He was on Unsolved Mysteries, History Channel, every documentary. So I would say Stanton Friedman, Richard Doland, definitely Grant Cameron, the Lorenzens, and a lot of the Ivan T. Sanderson. So a lot of the early ufologists who kind of helped to launch ufology in the 60s and the 70s, early contactee movement.
Wonderful. And I'll pass along the mic in a second, but I'm so delighted that Volume 5 of Forbidden Science is out now by Jacques Vallée. I think it just got announced like today or the other day.
Wow.
Yeah, what's up, Jacques? Hey, we'll
Shouts
see
out
you
to
on
Jacques
Cap
Vallée.
soon, brother. I'm just kidding. The other Jacques. You're Jacques, but he's like the other Jacques.
To be clear, that is the real Jacques Vallée. And that's where the name comes from. The name is derived from, obviously, Jacques Vallée and John Keel. And John Keel is not as well known as Vallée. He was a New Yorker. I think he was in the Air Force or the Army, served in the Korean War. He was a correspondent. He worked for AFN. He actually was engaged in like psychological warfare during the war, and he was a brilliant writer. And he was a very hands-on researcher early on. And his books are phenomenal for people that haven't, read John Keel's work. He's, I think, foundational kind of understanding what the phenomenon may or may not be.
I need to do that because a lot of my philosophy have been informed by works like Pippi Longstocking would be one. Clifford the Big Red Dog, I think, was another seminal work in my life. So I'm glad to hear, what informed yours.
Cat in the Hat too. Very
you know what? That one was a little tough for me to digest. So I probably need a reread on that. But thank you, because I should add that to my collection of these works. Yeah. But anyway, shout out to Julie in the chat. Jules of the Wood from Alabama. She's a remote viewer. She is actually she's from Indiana, but she lives in Alabama.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, she's a Hoosier. So, she said, I'm still an Indiana girl here in Alabama. So she is running the chat for us. Thank you, Jules. I wanted to ask you, Corey, since you mentioned Gnosticism and religion, and I'm going to be honest with you, and I don't know if Leah and Debs fall in this category as well, but when Dr. Psolka talks about and she conjoins the notion of God and religion into ufology, and not that I doubt her assertion in the least, I don't. But because I know that she has made a connection, I'm trying to understand that connection. Can you tell me how you understand that connection, or is that even something that you see that and feel that?
Yeah, I do. Thank you. That's a good question. I'm a big fan of Diana Psolka's work. I've quoted American Cosmic a ton. She's really phenomenal, and I try to follow all of her podcasts. I remember being a kid, and I think I was 12 years old when was it the Heaven's Gates? It was a UFO cult, and I think in 1996 or 97 that they were convinced there was a Halley's Bob comet was coming through, and according to the cult, there was a UFO that was going to pick them up and take them off before destruction. And I remember as a kid thinking like, oh my gosh, I need to find these people. I need to get on this UFO, man. It's over. But to answer the question, I realized then that there was a correlation between religious philosophy and, researching UFOs, and I seen that the same types of motivators and belief systems were involved. And there's a lot of history about that. If you look at, there are a lot of religious UFO cults. There's one that I think started out of, I think it was France in the 70s, called Realism, or
Raelianism.
Raelianism, and a very similar contactee story. And then when you look at the literature, if you look at UFO literature, the encounters that people have with these entities bear such a strong resemblance to what you'll read in, ancient literature, religious, scripture. People seeing angels. It wasn't always a joyous occasion to see an angel. Sometimes, people were terrified, and they didn't look like us. So
Wow.
I have probably, like Diana Pasoka, I've come to believe that this is all one thing. That what we were dealing with in Scripture, the phenomenon may be the latest iteration of that.
It's an interesting thought. I've also heard people, I don't know if it was Leah who said this, but I've heard people say that they think that this could be an emerging religion.
Mm-hmm.
The reason I'm unsure about that, and I'm going to pass it to you, Deb, so don't worry about that. But the reason that I don't think it will is just from a standpoint that it requires a church, and there's a lot of constructs and rules that it seems like more than just like having an online, if UFO Twitter, I don't know, is that a religion that people have sort of signed up for? Leah, is that a religion?
I mean, I'm not sure I'd call UFO Twitter a religion, but I may call it a cult. Yeah, so I mean, I think, like DJ, I'm just going to very briefly push back on this because it feels like
Sure.
this idea of religion existing as a hierarchical institution is really just an artifact of like Western style thinking.
Mhm.
Like we have the Pope, or we have, like leaders of like the American Baptists, or things like that. But I think this idea of it as a religion is founded in this notion that ufology and the phenomenon helps us sort of reconcile the subjective personal experience with what's at least nominally considered an objective shared kind of consensus based reality. And it also provides like frameworks for like sense making, like to help understand and sort of navigate the strange and unusual and difficult things that happen to people. And I also think that there's a huge overlap between experiencer phenomena and what's typically characterized as spiritual emergence. So divine awakenings or transcendence, either spontaneous or deliberately induced, I think historically very closely align themselves with what in modernity we identify as like the phenomenon, or just, contact or experiencer experiences.
I'll come back around on it, but I don't want to take up Deb's time.
Oh,
So
I
please
wanted
go
to
ahead, ma'am.
comment on that too.
Yes, ma'am.
Go ahead.
I just want to point out, like, when external things happen to humanity, we do tend to make religions out of them. So I want to say there is an external thing happening to some people. They would argue it's an internal thing also, like was mentioned by Leah, but there is an external thing happening, and humanity's ability to grasp it ends up sometimes being a religion. And there are other examples of religions that are based off of UFO encounters. I believe the Nation of Islam is one. One would argue even sky god encounters, so pretty much all religions for that, right? So I would say that doesn't exclude that from being something else is happening. The same thing has happened with the sun, the moon,
Hmm.
even crops being grown,
So,
so like
so your position is
it could potentially become a religion, but that doesn't, it's like a secondary effect.
okay. And
I
did
like
Yeah.
you
that.
did you have something else you wanted to add, Corey? Or are we gonna go
Um,
through the?
no,
Yeah.
I agree with what Leia and Deb said. And I was just thinking, I like to I kind of see the phenomena as a mechanism for us to evolve our consciousness. And, it could be that religion at that time was that mechanism. I'll also mention cargo cults. Cargo cults are like a modern example of, and I don't want to go through, what they are, but people can Google this, but they're a modern example of what happens when you show up to a group of human beings and you show them something that's outside of their reality. We have this inherent kind of need, it seems, to create belief systems to understand our reality. So if you throw in that UFO, and let's say we didn't have our, three major religions, what else would we have to try to frame what might be going on outside of, our perception? So yeah, I'll just add that.
They can certainly help us frame the discussion, those religious leaders. The only part I was going to, in response to what Leah said, is, well, Western religion may be more hierarchical. If you go to Eastern religion, if you go to Kyoto, if you go to Thailand, if you go in the Middle East, you go to old Constantinople, etc., there are religious symbols everywhere. Even if it's a little bit less hierarchical, it's no less symbolic. So there still is a construct, even a physical construct, even if it's less than some of the Western religions, and we won't name them for obvious reasons, but I understand what you mean from that standpoint. So I'm not sure that it's that idea, but I want to pose this question that Shannon DeSalvo has here. This is really good, and I have you guys attack that. I guess we could start with we could start with Corey, and then we can go to I guess Leah on this one after you go, Corey, please.
So I think that we have to determine the difference between a religion and a cult. That is kind of slippery. A lot of cults would argue that they are a religion, and a lot of religions, we would argue, are probably cults. How would you take that, Leah?
What sprang to mind was one man's religion is another man's cult. To me, and I certainly make no pretense of having a background in religious studies, but to me, intuitively, what it feels like is that a cult has an extremely inflexible, kind of dogmatic and almost fundamental expectation of its adherents to follow kind of all of the rules and expectations of the group. And I guess you could say at some end of the spectrum, any kind of religious orthodoxy may be categorized as that. But I also think their religion instead offers a bit more kind of flexibility or spaciousness when it comes to individual practice, even at its most observant levels. You still have some play in how you interpret and act within the framework of that religion.
I was going to say, Leah, in our religion, the Hasidics, I think there could be an argument made there, right?
Oh yeah, that's what I was thinking of when I said that. Is you have Hasids who follow all 613 commandments or whatever to the T with zero flexibility, and that, as a Jew, I feel comfortable saying that feels very culty to me, but also understand that this is one of the major kind of extant sects within modern Judaism as well.
I would almost argue.
I just want to say one thing, just for everybody out there, including the panel. There is a Netflix movie, and I'm remiss, I don't remember the name of it, but it's about it's a true story about a woman who escapes a Hasidic sect in Brooklyn, obviously, and escapes to Germany, to where she has a relative to escape her husband in her marriage. I think it was going to be before the birth of children. She's like, I don't want to have children with this guy. I can't stay in this life anymore. And she escapes to a Jewish neighborhood in Germany. And she has a relative there. And it is a awesome movie. It's a true story. So if those of you go on Netflix and find that, the character is extremely compelling who plays the young lady.
Wow.
Anyway, I'm sorry, Debs.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I've definitely looked at cults, watched documentaries, things like that, and I find that they have almost a formula. There's a really charismatic cult leader that no one's allowed to question. money has to be provided. People want to go at different levels of involvement, like they have stages of progression that they usually have to pay for. There's isolation from the family. It's almost like a formula, and it's like I see those patterns when I look at different cults, and I'm like, well, I think it's actually not that hard to make one. Like you just need that really charismatic leader to start.
Corey, so if you're not busy next week, I want you to think about this. You can come up. I think you could be the leader. You have awesome hair. But Jules, our chat moderator, Jules of the Wood, says here, technically, cults follow a man or woman that claims divinity, I believe.
Yeah. So
Jules, by the way, I just want to say, Jules is also involved in library science, just like Leah. So, yeah.
now, I was reading Julie's quote, and David Koresh came to mind. Do you remember David Koresh?
Oh, yeah.
The Waco siege.
Yes.
He, to his followers, he claimed to be divine. So that does seem to be like an inherent component, that you do have this charismatic leader. They do claim some divinity. It is very very fundamentalistic. But at the same time, if I scale that larger, it looks like a religion. And it's not to disparage any cults or any religion, but to Deb's point, I think I've told my wife a lot. It's like, I think I could start a cult. I think I know exactly what I would need to say, what I would do. And I think because people want to believe something. They want somebody who has the answers. And if they think they found that person, they will follow them. And unfortunately, a lot of people take advantage of, they exploit people's beliefs or people's needs, emotional and social needs. And, you do wind up with a lot of cults.
I think Simon Fly is trying to preempt you. He's saying that he's starting one. You just sent $50. So thank you, Simon. It's great.
I'm your second member.
I just want to argue, though, that knowing that formula is how you avoid the cult.
Exactly.
If being knowledgeable is how you don't get in there.
Yes.
Can I get an amen?
Yeah. And there's an indoctrination process, that kind of indoctrinates you into their way of belief, and they, isolate you, and so we can move.
Let's draw this into UFOs, Corey. Do you think that experiencers who have had abduction experiences, perhaps who have been exposed to this sort of cultivation of their belief into this group of, whether it be greys or mantids or reptilians, that you need to carry our message, you need to believe what we say, do what we say? Do you think there's a possible cult sort of situation going on there?
Yeah.
And then Deb and Leah after him, please.
Yeah, I mean, it's that's really hard to say. It's a very so yes, going back since the beginning of the contactee movement, we've had dozens and hundreds of people who have had profound messages, and they go out and they start their groups. I'm a big fan. Well, not a big fan, but like trickster gods. You think about like one of Jacques Keel's wrote a book called Messengers of Deception. So what if it was that there was another entity who was outside our space-time, and they were just messing around with us because they had the ability to appear to be supreme beings or to be gods. So, and it's not to say that people who have these beautiful messages, it's not to say that they're being used or that they're not being altruistic. It's just that I'm military minded, so the thief doesn't come as a thief, right? So if you're getting these messages and there's multiple people getting these messages, I think we just want to understand what the motive might be before we say this is from a superior being. They have the answers. We're going to follow them.
Hey, Corey, can I just mention to you, this is one of Nathan's very early hypotheses when we came together and started sort of trying to decide what we thought about or what we felt about the phenomenon. This is one of them.
a large scale psychological, warfare game is what it looks like from a lot of sides. And one of the things I've been very fortunate these last 2 years to haven't got on UFO Twitter. I saw an orb in 2020. That's what kind of pushed me over the edge. I had been hearing about UFO Twitter forever, listening to all you guys' podcasts. So the orb kind of, set me over. And because of that, I've met so many great people. I joke that 9 out of 10 of my friends are, experiencers, which is kind of true at this point. And they're phenomenal people. Just some of the best people I've ever met. And I met a lot of them at the 2 conferences that I've attended and over the phone. So I'm always very careful not to be respectful of them and what their experience is. And definitely not here to say what they aren't or not experiencing. I respect whatever they've experienced, subjectively.
Debs.
So yeah, kind of going back a little bit, and this is to a comment that we had together, or a conversation we had together, Corey and I. We were talking about how PTSD might be a factor with the phenomenon, and it occurred to me today that people who have had trauma in their lives may be looking for answers and may be more vulnerable and may also be more hyper aware of the environment that they're in. So, I mean, these are thoughts that I had. So when we're talking about maybe they're more susceptible to cults, maybe they're like grasping for answers. I think those are all factors, but they're also going to be the group that will be more aware of what's going on.
Yeah, trauma. I know Dr. Carla Turner, who's a phenomenal researcher who passed in the late 90s. So she talked a lot about trauma. Really, all kind of abductee researchers talk about trauma. It's a traumatic experience. There does seem to be something that, I don't want to say a benefit, but a byproduct of trauma. It does seem that it opens up certain portions, of our perception, things that we couldn't perceive before. I don't know if that's a necessity to awakening. I'm starting to believe that is a part of the process. I know for me personally, 2019 was a rough year, just for just career wise, and just being in my mid 30s and having 3 kids and trying to find out where I'm at. It was a traumatic year. It really was. And I'll be personal. I'll be candid with everyone. I spent most of my adult life kind of bragging to my wife that I don't cry. It's like, oh, I never cry. I don't cry at funerals. There's nothing. I spent my 20s kind of taking life just in the face. So after 2019, I couldn't stop crying. Man, I'd see somebody like walking a puppy, I'm crying. I hear somebody's sad story, I'm crying. And that year was it was an amazing year. I grew so much spiritually, emotionally. So from a trauma standpoint, I think that there is a trade-off when you have a trauma, that it can open you up to something greater. But to your point, Deb, could that also be an entry point for something to control you or something to manipulate you because you're at a low point? I don't know.
That's a good one, man. That's a good answer. I want to ask Leah a question, and then we can also funnel that question over to you guys. This happens sometimes on Caps. I ask questions of my co-hosts. Just call me crazy, going off-roading here. Leah, when exorcisms occur with this other phenomenon that's perhaps connected to our phenomenon, meaning ufology, and perhaps a series of other phenomenons such as a tangential component of Bigfoot, et cetera, et cetera. But when exorcisms occur and you have a Catholic priest that will recite a certain script that will somehow eject an evil spirit from a particular dwelling, why do you think that works? If in fact you believe it works.
Yes, this is a great question. So the answer I'll give is actually very similar to how I would talk about the contact T movement, which is that the Western tradition has very few narratives for the average layperson to navigate and interpret anomalous or strange or mysterious phenomena, either something observed or something personally experienced. And I think that the power of an exorcism isn't necessarily that, like, I think that there is something real going on in the sense that it is real to someone's reality and it's something that is deeply affecting them. And the process of an exorcism, one, provides witnessing by an authority figure that the individual trusts. So it legitimizes their experience, makes them feel less alone and more connected due to something that's likely highly traumatic. The other thing it does is it provides a very powerful ritualistic container in which both the priest or the exorcist or the shaman is able to guide the intensity of the person's reality in a way that our current culture and current moment and current sense-making frameworks don't manage, because everything that surrounds us in Western culture is so heavily predicated on this ultra materialistic interpretation of human experience. But the reality is that huge swaths of the population regularly experience things that are well outside that kind of materialist interpretation. So I think exorcisms or shamanic journeying or whatever provide that kind of safe container which allows someone to navigate their intense internal landscape. The other thing is there's something called neural annealing, which happens. And neural annealing basically is a way to excite the brain and then get it to then simmer back down in a way that's much more conducive to like emotional regulation or being able to kind of just navigate life in a more reliable or stable fashion. And there are all sorts of things we do for neural annealing. Right now, obviously, psychedelics are a big example of this, but it could be something like having sex. It could be like really intense exercise. It could be emotional catharsis, or it could be an exorcism or a shamanic journey. And this process of neural annealing is pretty well established in terms of like cognitive science and consciousness research. And I think that when you go through that kind of ultra intense shakeup, it then provides like this emotional and psychological catharsis. So for all intents and purposes, yes, it's definitely like real and very helpful for many people.
But from a practical standpoint, if there is a demon, or I mean this, and by the way, I heard a great podcast about a paranormal experience in Pennsylvania. It was a local legislator who had bought a house he wanted since his childhood. It's called the Brownsville, Pennsylvania incident, something like that. And he ended up, it was a 15-year battle, but eventually they were able to get the spirit out of this home. And so, Corey, from your standpoint, what do you think it is that spirit is reacting to that causes it to say they hear the ritual that Leah described, something that isn't part of modern day culture, but was maybe written? I don't even know how old those modalities are, or that protocol. What do you think about that?
I'm not sure. Obviously I've read a lot. I tend to think that it's probably not the words, that it's the emotion or the energy that is emanating, from that person that probably, acts as a repellent to like a negative entity. If that makes
like
sense.
A wasp. It's a wasp spray, basically.
Yeah.
The throwing of holy water. But before we get into that estimate of the situation, Tom is in the joint for Corey's surprise party, baby.
Hey, what's up, brother? You're on mute.
Bienvenidos, Tom.
Oh, he's muted.
He's muted.
There we go. His mic is not connected. That's why. So
there we go.
Tom, there he is.
What's up, guys?
Hey, welcome. You feeling okay?
Yeah. I've just been sick all week, so I just got my voice back. So I'm happy to be here. I've been listening the last like 10 minutes. Dude, I haven't seen you, Corey. I haven't seen you in like a couple months now, since the last one.
Yeah, December. And I know we met in October and had a good time. I think
Yeah,
both
yeah.
nights we stayed out till 4 o'clock in the morning. You know?
Yeah.
And I have the book that you gave me, which I think is like a phenomenal what you guys did, like with that era of ufology, and you turned it into a comic book. It's
Oh,
really
you
well.
read it?
Oh yeah. You gave me a copy. It's really well done.
Yeah.
There it is.
I'm in the doghouse with Tom. I bought one, but I haven't read it yet. But I've been admiring it. It keeps me company every day at my
Thank you.
desk.
Dude, I would go to these conventions and like literally give them out to people. I'm like, please read this. I think it's really good. Yeah.
It is.
Thank you so much for doing that. It was so awesome to meet you there. By the way, you look like the artistic version of Rocky Balboa with the hoodie on. I'm waiting for you to go jog and maybe hit a side of beef in the freezer.
Dude, it's just to deter away from the fact that I'm so run down. I'm like, I'll just put a hoodie on, have a little
Yes.
coffee, and I'll be good.
I
And
gave
chicken
him my
soup, right?
cold when
Leah,
I
chicken
interviewed
soup.
him.
Yes, yeah, matzo
Yeah.
ball soup.
When I interviewed
right.
him, I gave him my cold through the microphone. I don't know.
Yeah. Deb, come on. We told you stop sharing like that. All right. I don't know if you guys, Deb, before we go, did you have anything to say about exorcism? Anything interesting? And then we can
Yeah.
move on.
Well,
Yes,
I
ma'am.
mean, obviously it has a purpose and you can go either way with it, that it's really exorcising demons, or, you could go with placebo effect, which is, a psychological concept that once you believe a thing has been done or is working, that's all you need. Which, it's not necessarily a bad thing either, because if it's a spiritual problem, that would be effective as well.
Yeah, I will try. I will try to
Yeah.
find this episode for you, but just to, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, Corey. I'll try to find this episode for you, but there were essentially multiple members of the family, a lot of different things happen. Again, it was a 15-year battle. They even found where there were things. There was a sealed, kind of like behind a stairwell. There was a wall. And there were things that were found inside the wall. They brought in a medium. The medium is the one who cracked the case. The medium is the one who sort of gave them the tools to fight and said, if you look inside this wall, I think you'll find something. And they broke into that wall and found things inside the house that were in a sealed wall. So this spirit was quite powerful, had driven people out of the house, members of the family. And then finally, I think they said on the last day, they felt its kind of light go out, and they never had a problem again after that. But 15 years is it's a long time. Yeah, I'll find that podcast and share it with everybody. It was on Unsolved Mysteries podcast. That's where I heard this. So if you guys know that, obviously everyone knows the show. So did you have anything, Tom? Do you want to add?
I have a question. So Leah mentioned something that you have a lot of these like these spiritualistic rituals, right? That oftentimes take a mediator, like a shaman or somebody like that. And like according to what you said, like the theory that this is all just to help navigate an internal landscape of sorts, right? Do you and the rest of the panel, do you think that that's strictly true, or are there things that are outside that internal landscape? Like for instance, when people call on guides or something like that that point them in the right direction.
Oh yeah.
Do they exist outside of that, or is that still kind of part of the internal landscape? It's a mind fuck if you think about it, but it could go both ways. I don't know.
When you say navigate what? Just to make sure, is you talking about a spiritual encounter in a home? What is the context of the?
Like, let's say you have an ayahuasca ceremony, for instance, and you have a shaman come in and everyone takes the brew and everyone goes on their individual spiritual journey. But I think like there's an argument, right, to be made that like all of that takes place inside your mind or your soul, whatever you want to call it, or even the guides themselves, like they exist within you. But I'm like wondering, can they also exist outside of you and almost kind of be like a separate entity or separate force from all of that? And I don't know if there's room for those two theories to play well with each other or not. But like I always wondered if it's all in here or if there's actually something out there that's communicating with me in here.
Who wants to take that first? You want that, Corey? Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Corey.
That's something that and that's where I like diverge from technical research and you get into like theology. But I think all is one. I really do. I really do think that all is one. That, and I want to try to quote Neville Goddard. All that you behold, although it appears without, it is within. It is within, of which this world is but a shadow. And I'm a firm believer that we don't live in a materialistic universe. It is thought, it is consciousness. We are manifesting this. So what those entities, yeah, I think they're a part of the same thing that we're a part of. Maybe they have more bandwidth than we have, and we have very narrow
Good way of
bandwidth.
putting it.
And I think that, yeah, to a degree, we're sleepwalkers here. We have very narrow perception.
It's been working for 55 years, Corey. I mean, I'm just kidding. Go ahead, Debs, and then we'll go Leah, and then myself.
I don't know. I have to go with a personal experience where I was shown that a lot of the things that are outside of us are actually from within. And if you read anything on perception, all of our world is really from, things within. Our brain makes the world around us. The world that you see may not be the same world that I see. So I'm on the fence with that one. I can't really give you a solid answer, but there's a possibility that things are a little more complicated than we realize.
Leah, prime time.
Yeah. So I will say that probably my most closely held unconventional belief is that consciousness is not fully local. I think a substantial amount of consciousness is basically part of a field that we engage with and transceive. And it's very prescient that we're talking about this. I was just reading Bernardo Kastrup's Meaning and Absurdity this morning, which, if anyone hasn't read that, I think is probably one of the best works on understanding and interpreting anomalous phenomena. And he draws really heavily on a lot of the kind of current idealists like Donald Hoffman, basically saying that the best we can have is this kind of like weak objectivity where we can have things occur that all of us largely agree with and perceive similarly, like our material and physical realities. But that is the best we can do. That there's still this interpretive lens going on that interfaces between us and what's actually going on around us. And Donald Hoffman uses the example of when you use your computer, you're engaging with the icons and software on the computer. You're not actually engaging directly with the computer. And I think that that's sort of when we think to loop this back around to what we were originally talking about is this all happening internally? I don't think it's all necessarily happening or being generated internally. A lot of it is likely exogenous or outside of ourselves. But I think the emotional and sort of psychological experience and intensities associated with this is an internal experience. So in that sense, like getting away from the anxiety or fear or despair that may accompany someone as they're going through an emergence of some kind, I think that is an internal reality. It's not something that's happening outside of the person.
That's interesting. That's interesting. Go ahead, DJ.
That's all Leah does is interesting. That's what she specializes in. So I think of this kind of like, I'm going to use some computer analogies. Like in the Air Force, we have these, when you walk up to the wall and you're going to plug this Ethernet cable into your computer, port security is turned on. So if that port hasn't been open, you can plug into there and there's information coming from a server. But if that port's not on, you're not going to get anything until they basically put the name of your port, your computer, your MAC address onto that port. Then you'll start to receive data and you're connected to this larger web. So for, this shaman, this individual maybe who's, bringing the ayahuasca, who's going to bring you that experience, that's outside. And then inside, you may have your own internal port that is either open or not open. So some people will open that port and they're able to connect with the spirit world. We call them mediums. I consider them heroes because they are able to bring comfort to people who are in an extremely stressful situation with someone who is on another plane. They can't connect to them. The phenomenon can connect to that person and move things around in their physical world and terrorize them and make them feel fear and make them feel something as soon as they walk in their dwelling. And then you have another person that comes in that is able to, their port is open, and maybe my port, I could open that port maybe if I knew how, and maybe I'm that Bigfoot who mind speaks with people. I don't know. I don't mean me personally, but I mean there's some Bigfoots that seem to mind speak, some don't. So, some of them may have that port open and some that port's turned off. And then, of course, you have that port at the wall, who's the shaman who is coming in and putting stimuli, which could be in the form of ayahuasca. It could be in the form of ritual that is then coming into you and creating an experience that may be very positive, may not. So that's kind of how I look at it. I think of mediums and so forth are these people that are able to connect. And I also think that depending upon what's going on with you, you may be open to an experience or you may be closed off. Someone's trying to hypnotize you and you just won't let it happen. You have your door closed. Your arms are folded. So that's kind of how I think of it, Tom.
Yeah, that idea of like closing yourself off to the experience, I wasn't a big believer in that. I felt like if something was going to happen to you, it was going to happen. Then I did do an ayahuasca ceremony with two of my friends, and one friend was very open to it, and the other one was very closed off, and he came from a financial background, like a finance background. And I just remember that the friend who was open to it was definitely in it, had the experience, different from mine, but like, we can relate to it. The friend who wasn't into it, who was so closed off, and I think like 2 hours in, he's like, I want to go home. I'm like, dude, we cannot go home right now. There's people throwing up everywhere. Like, they're going to call the cops, et cetera, et cetera. But he could not get into it. And he took the same dose, if not, I made him take another one. Well, I mean, I didn't make him, but like I suggested take another one. Maybe you'll get into it. He did. And ayahuasca is a very powerful, analog. It's not something you can just take and be like, all right, well, that's good. I'm going to go to work. But he could not get into the experience. And that was my first like real life world case scenario. Like, wow, he closed himself off and was not able to connect to whatever it was that everybody else was connecting to. And ever since then, like, I've been a big believer. You close yourself off, it's not going to happen.
I have something I want to say here, which is I'm super fascinated by how the experience of aesthetic chill relates to people's openness to sort of awe and wonderment. And I see this actually, when I interviewed Mick West the other night, that was the question I asked him, is if he ever experiences aesthetic chill, because there's a relationship between that and awe and transcendence, where people who don't experience aesthetic chill tend to also have internal frameworks that are extremely materialist in nature and like not connected to religion or divinity or this overwhelming sense of awe or wonderment that people have when they see nature or art or hear certain kinds of music. And similarly, I have this pet theory that also relates to how people experience psychedelics like ayahuasca and psilocybin, where if they are not already inclined to experience that aesthetic chill or frisson, in turn, those experiences kind of lack that spiritual or divine dimension that is otherwise, pretty common for when people participate in those ceremonies.
That kind of brings us back.
Go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
That kind of brings us back to, are these things, occurring inside or outside? It made me think of like the double slit experiment, the observer effect. We know that our observation of the universe interacts with us, like the universe kind of can mold to our intentions or our expectations. That's interesting that somebody would take ayahuasca and not feel it. It almost makes me want to ask if they have like a gallbladder issue or something, or they not metabolize ayahuasca, because it's kind of like,
get that gallbladder. If you were at the ayahuasca ceremony with Tom, get that gallbladder checked. That's your cab, medical, and you can talk to Deb if you need to. After the show.
Maybe he got the bad batch or something.
I don't know. He's very straight laced, and I don't know, it was just really strange because again, like any of these analogs you take, I was always under the impression that you're in for a ride no matter what. You don't have a choice,
So Tom, if you have, that on your laptop, you have that Ethernet port, But if that's not turned on, like there's a malfunction with that Ethernet port, then even though you've got a live port on the wall, got good Ethernet connection to the wall, but then you plug in and nothing happens.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a really
That's
good
what I'm
point.
guessing. Sorry, all these computer analogies. What's going on here, Deb? Well, first of all, let me say hello to Nicole Nelson right here. She said bless and thank you. Thank
Hey,
you
Nicole.
for coming and joining us.
Hey, Nicole.
Obviously, you're a Corey fan, so are we. He's got great hair. Chase Howard is here.
hey,
Hello,
Chase.
Chase, what's up, buddy?
And Shannon says here, what does she say? The Watseka Wonder story makes me think about there being several explanations for things like possession. Oh, we're back to possession. I don't know where Deb's going. You know what? The floor is dead, so wherever Deb wants to go.
I guess I just wanted to talk about what you're excited about with this. I mean, it's a pretty broad question, but obviously there are a million things. What are you excited about right now? And I love the fact, by the way, that you're writing notes as we talk.
Me?
Yeah, it looks like you're writing notes.
Yeah, I'm writing all kinds of notes because you guys are hitting
But-
on all kinds of things. What am I excited about in terms of like current, like what's happening currently?
Yes, what are you excited about? What is giving you that aesthetic chill right now when it comes to UFOs?
He may not actually
Yeah.
experience it. Only about like 2/3 of people do.
I'm not familiar with the aesthetic chill. So I'm gonna
It's
have to.
awe. It's awe.
Yeah.
I'm in a constant state of awe. People talk about meditating. I actually, don't meditate. I don't know if I could sit still that long. Whatever is going on with me, and like if you look at my Twitter feed and you see like, why is he posting all this stuff? I can't tell you. Those things come from outside of me. I don't know how to say it, but it's like an intuition. So what am I excited about? I'm excited about watching other people come into their own. I'm excited about watching people realize that they don't have to live their life out of fear. Fear shouldn't be your motivator. I'm excited to see people realize that we truly are brothers and sisters, that we are all connected, that we do have a common goal, as like a species. I'm excited to see people cut down their barriers and open their minds. I see that happening, even though there's a lot of bad things happening, across the world. But on a personal level, I see so many people doing amazing things, and that's what really, really inspires me. It's not about me. That's why I try to be anonymous. But I'm really about pushing other people to ask questions, not so they can get objective, answers. They can go find this document so they can find the subjective answers within themselves. And I think ultimately that's what all of us really want. Is to have an answer about who we are and what's our place in this this kind of the scheme that we find ourselves in.
I have to say, I feel like I'm in that same place too, Corey. Like went from finding all the information, going, this is amazing. Now I know it, and everyone needs to think about it. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. I just like on Twitter, I like getting conversations started. It's not that, so I don't have any answers. It's all conjecture. And of course, I've read all the same books and watched the same documentaries as everyone else. But I really just like to put out different points of opinion. And then I love to see like those threads kind of blossom on their own and other people hop in. Maybe they start arguing, but I just love to see that. I kind of want to galvanize, people with, maybe something that they haven't heard before. So I try to find, rare pieces of, UFO data to share. But my ultimate goal, and I'm just kind of going on here to see we're running out of time, is
no, you're okay. Keep going.
Is when I got on UFO Twitter, one of the first things I noticed is that there was no healthy discourse. If someone disagreed with you, they were pretty quick to bash you. And I also saw that that there was a lack of kind of data out there. People, they weren't quoting things. They were just like, oh, I thought I heard this and I heard that. And they would argue. And too many times I would see two people who actually agree with one another, but they've used different ways to frame what they're talking about. Maybe different different words. So I said, if I'm going to do anything on Twitter, I have to promote healthy discourse, positive interactions. So that's one of my goals, is to, if I'm going to have an interaction with you, it's going to be positive, even if we disagree. And so try to cultivate that. And I've seen that a little bit, that more and more people are like, thank you, my friend. I really appreciate that. So just trying to, trying to be an example to show, that we all can treat each other a lot better. And these conversations we want to have about UFOs can be a lot easier if we all just be a little bit more open-minded and, get rid of some of the barriers we've placed around these topics. Because we're
Corey,
all trying. Yeah.
Sorry, do you think so? What do you think it's going to take to galvanize the rest of the public, so to speak, outside of UFO Twitter, to kind of be like, oh, okay, let's take a serious look at this? Because right now, if you do a poll, like, most people be like, yeah, they might be out there or whatever, but they're unaware of, I guess, the legacy of like of the cover up, and as well as investigations going on for 75 years. So like, I wonder, do you think it's going to be an event? Do you think it's going to be somebody, or maybe a podcast blows it wide open? I don't know.
I mean, that's a good question. I really struggle with that. I can't imagine, even if we did have the infamous White House lawn landing, people would still say that's CGI. I wasn't there. I don't think there's anything that's going to be able to convince everybody. All of us, we've seen enough. We're convinced. I also think that the world, and especially the American population, is desensitized to this because it's been there in the background their whole life. Yeah, their whole life there's been movies. So we've always known that it's there. And when you go to check up on it, they say, it could be, maybe it's not. So I think people are really open to it, but I don't think they're ready to incorporate it as a part of their reality. It's kind of like Santa Claus or something. They're like, it could be, well, I won't say Santa Claus. I'm saying it's something that they put out as a possibility because it's been, it's a part of our culture. I personally think on an individual level is what it takes. I think that you have to have individual initiative to be curious enough, and then you go out on your journey and you find out something that satisfies you, that there's something beyond. But I don't think there's a one way to do it, unfortunately.
I think that's awesome. Sorry, galvanize on an individual level. Like that's a pretty cool thought.
Well, that's how we're doing it, right? But what Tom is asking about is mass acceptance, and for mass acceptance, you're going to need a mass event. So the White House lawn thing, forget about the location. The location could be a parking lot in Des Moines, a Walmart parking lot. What it's going to take is where all the news cameras are trained on some sort of a craft, hovering over a city. Local affiliates have come out, so no matter which channel you change your channel to, whether you're watching this cable news or that cable news or this local news or that local news, you're going to see, oh my God, there's a craft hovering above a parking lot in Des Moines. That's when in order to get mass acceptance, you need a mass event. And anything short of that, somebody standing up on a podium saying it, is probably not going to do it, because not everybody even watches the news or watches C-SPAN even. So, or is going to say, well, I don't trust that government because it's that administration and not the administration I like. So there's that. That's my thought on that. But I wanted to get two other things that and then we got to get to Leah Primetime that relate to what Tom said earlier about what's within that's going to enable you to have an experience. And related to Bigfoot, I'm very excited about this guy coming on named Terry Wendell from Rock Hill Bigfoot in South Carolina. And when he went on his first expedition, he broke away from the group at night to go to an area where they were picking up trash from loser campers who will leave their litter in the woods. And he and this woman went back to that area where they were picking up trash and bagging it. And this Native American woman said, so you want to see them because they're here, right in that wood line. So she starts talking to them. and I don't know if they're making noises or whatever. And he goes, I don't see them. How do you see them? She goes, you're not supposed to see them yet, but go ahead and introduce yourself. So he introduces himself, says, hi, my name's Terry. I'm really happy to be here. I'm not here to invade your space. I'm not here to cause you any harm. I'm just really interested in the way that you live and the way that you go about surviving in the forest, and just want to learn about you. And so they leave and they go back to their tents. And that night, he feels something push into the fabric of his tent and touch him with a big finger. He had a one-man tent. So one-man tent, you're not far away from the fabric no matter where you're laying in that tent.
Yeah.
And he was just like, oh, my God, but he hurt. And you could see my camera shaking here as it was walking up to his tent. So he kind of knew what was out there. Anyway, so it's
Wow.
within. Are you ready to have an experience? I did have a sighting when I was a kid, and I haven't had anything since then. Nathan hasn't had a sighting. So are we going to have a sighting? Can we manifest that? And the only thing I think of here, thank you, Delta, and welcome for joining in and giving some love for our friend Corey. I wrote, the journey to within never ends. It is not to manifest a specific event. So we're constantly trying to evolve and to evolve, but I don't think we can evolve to create an event. Now, obviously, James Iandoli has a protocol where he can make an event happen, but it's a collective thing, right? It's the CE5 protocol. But I think if we just keep looking to evolve the way that Corey was talking about within, and just keep improving our understanding of other humans and how they see things, and try to be empathetic to how they're dealing with the world and what's happened in their life and in their experience, is the most we can do. And then if an event happens, it happens. But I'm not sure we can manifest a specific event. And with that, let me go to prime time.
Yeah, sure. So one of my questions for you is something I like to ask everyone who's on this kind of journey of exploration and discovery, which is if you could talk a little bit about how your views and ideas have changed over time.
Tremendously. I would say it's made me more human, because the studying the phenomena has forced me, as it probably does a lot of people, to walk away from a lot of if we have fundamentalistic beliefs, it forces you to kind of reframe how you see the world. So I guess in short, it's made me a better person. I researched this to the point to where I realized the only thing that I could truly do is to be a better person in the here and now. That's kind of like that's what my takeaway is, and I love researching it. But every chance that I get to have an interaction with another person, that's like a sacred, special moment for me. So I don't know if that answers your question, but as a part of like the awakening process, I found so much more studying this, more than like nuts and bolts. I found out that again, we are created, and you start having synchronicities with people, and those are kind of hard. Those are kind of hard to understand if you have this materialistic way of seeing the universe. It's confounding. Like how do these things happen? So once you have some of those experiences, it forces you to step outside of your comfort zone a little bit, and you don't see yourself as as a black guy or as an American. You're like, all right, I'm a being with other bunch of beings having a conscious experience, and I don't want to have anything to do with them having a bad conscious experience, So
Sure.
So that's how it's helped me.
It's such a beautiful answer. Like Corey, every time you're giving a response on this show, I'm thinking like this is like you were such an inspiration for me last summer, because I saw you as just this emblem of really good faith conversation, and also someone that rather than prescriptively answering people's questions, just did the yeoman's work of sharing resources and sharing materials to provide people like their own path to navigate. I just like I feel like every answer you're giving, just my respect and affection for you just grows. It's awesome.
Oh, thanks, Leah. That means a lot. Am I saying, and I'm saying it, Leah? My wife was like, I think her name's Leah. So I was telling her.
Oh yeah, it's Leah. But honestly, like I like gloss right over it because it's so common that people call me Leia. I'm just like, yeah, whatever. Like we're all friends here.
It sounds
It's cool.
cool.
Yeah.
Two different
Princess
constructions.
Blame
Leia.
Star Wars. You can
I-
blame Star Wars.
I have never heard this before. Oh my god.
First time.
Let's
First time.
Yeah.
let's go to estimate of the situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, one thing about meeting Corey in person is like he is a hulking figure, so you kind of walk up to him like, oh man, like he's a little intimidating, but then like once you start talking, it's actually pretty down to earth, and I know you have a background in the military, right?
Yeah.
Can you talk about that and how that shaped your perspective on the phenomenon, like itself? Like I know you're talking about it earlier, how this might look like a certain way because of that background, and like I would love to just hear more about that.
Yeah, so I had read so many UFO books. I remember I was doing my security clearance. I was like, no way they're gonna give me a clearance, man. And I'm like, this guy is such a conspiracy nut. We're not gonna let him in the military. So I remember like telling friends, like, hey man, like, don't tell them like I'm like a UFO nut, man. They're gonna think I'm crazy. So what really surprised me, so I get in the military. My first assignment was with F-16s in Misawa, Japan. And, I'm just a young airman, so it's not something you ever bring up. I was with a major one day, and I was sitting at the operations desk with him. We were launching F-16s, and I knew that he flew the F-117 out of Tonopah, and I knew he flew when it was black. Right. So, and he would talk about, flying out to Tonopah and being out there for a week and not telling his family that he was flying this, stealth craft. And I said, so what do you think about Roswell, Major? And he kind of got red and he turned toward me and he's like, they told us what happened. They told us. And I said, well, what did they tell us? It was a weather balloon. And then he, went back to his PC and I was like, oh, well, he got the briefing, not to talk about certain things. During my whole time in the military, I never saw anything that led me to believe that there were UFOs or aliens or that anybody was trying to hide anything at all, outside of some of the programs that we're read into, which keep our country safe. So that was surprising to me, and nobody ever sat me down and said, don't talk about UFOs, or if you see a UFO, don't report it. So there was like no protocols. When I went to get my top secret clearance, I really thought they were going to, come down on me because that's when they look more granular into your background. But no, it never came up as a topic, and that led me to believe that they were really good at what they do because I know there was a reality to it. So I said that this must be absolutely separate from the regular Air Force, and probably my rank and file, were in the regular Air Force, doesn't have anything to do with it. So if you ask them, they're probably telling you the truth. There's nothing to see.
But then, so like when you see some of these events around the world, like over the last like 75 years or so, do you have like a specific lens at which you view it as like, oh, this might be what they're doing, or this might be what, like a reconnaissance mission, or is it beyond all of that?
Yeah, just based on what I've read, I do think that there is there's a team. There's a team of professionals who probably deploy globally to mitigate these things. Whether it's somebody saw a UFO sighting and they want you to think that you saw a military helicopter, so now they go fly a bunch of helicopters, or there could be operations where they want people for whatever reason to think that they did see a UFO, and maybe they do that too. So I think there's a lot of operations that we're not aware of that are designed to control our perceptions. We've been socially engineered, if you will. And I also think that there's a long-term acclimatization program that's been going on. Probably since the day the Earth stood still came out. You can go back to that movie and still some of the themes that we're talking about today you'll find in that film. So I think there's a big charade kind of going on, if you will. And I think there are a lot of people who do know exactly what's going on. It's part of their job to maintain the perception.
Does
Yeah,
oh,
I,
sorry.
I was going to say, from my perspective, I had 4,000 hours of flying and never saw a thing on 3 different continents, with the Air Force, and never saw anything other than my sighting when I was like 14 or 15 years old. I think it was the beginning of 10th grade. So from that perspective, the other thing that Tom asked about how it shapes you, one of the things I like about being part of this community is that to be part of the Air Force, you have to really harden yourself emotionally. You can't be somebody that is going to cry at something that you see. You might be overseas and see starving animals. You see a lot of things that you don't want to see. You may see dead people in some cases. You may be part of a gunship crew that makes people dead. So I love coming in this community because I can open up now and I can feel these emotions and see people who are struggling with everyday things, and now be open to that where I wouldn't have been open, I don't think, during the course of my career, because it's not healthy for you to be that way. You have to be able to toughen up in order to do that job. The other thing about disclosure I would say is that I'll repeat kind of what Jim Semivan said. They certainly know more than what we know, meaning the USG, but they don't know everything. And the conundrum for them, as he said, and if you want to listen to a great interview, and I'm not somebody who's always promoting cab stuff. I think Stuart Davis's interview with Jim Semivan was even better than our interview with Jim Semivan. And I thought we did a great interview, but I thought his was better. And he said they're at a loss to be able to explain something that they don't understand. Because as a person who's responsible, whether you own a store and a customer comes up and asks you what's going on in your store, and you can't explain to them what's going on, they're like, you don't even know what's going on in your own store? I'm not in it, I don't need to shop here. From their perspective, it's very, and that's not to say I agree with ruining people's careers, with lying, with threatening people, with intimidating people, with making experiments on people that are immoral, with all these different things that we all know, everybody on this panel knows that have happened. So that's not excusing or saying I agree with that. But understanding and agreeing are two different things. And for them, it's very difficult for them to say, yes, we know there's something out there. We don't control it. We can't control it. It can outfly us. That's not something you stand up on a podium as somebody who asserts dominion over the skies of the United States, and in fact globally if necessary. You don't make that statement, because it makes you look inept, it makes you look weak, and the Russians would feast on that, as would the Chinese. Debs.
Very well said. Well said. I agree.
So I wanted to ask you if you think your heroes, which I can identify are, of course, Jacques Keel, Jacques Vallée, and then Charles Fort, are going to be validated in the future, if you think we're on the path of validating these people that have been keeping track of this phenomenon.
Yes, I do. I think they're going to be validated, and I think a lot of researchers, you could throw, Grant Cameron in there, Richard Dolan, but specifically Keel and Vallée, because they really, Vallée, for a long time, the UFO community was really upset with him because they wanted, a nuts and bolts approach to aliens. What planet are they coming from? And Vallée, was talking about, multiple dimensions and crypto-terrestrials and ultra-terrestrials, just like John Keel, who was talking about the super spectrum, which is this, this field of energy that we're kind of swimming in. So 10 years ago, I would say less than half of the community really had made their way to consciousness. And now I see on UFO Twitter, it's pretty ubiquitous. Everyone knows that there's something that's fundamental at the conscious level that's connected to UFOs. So I think that they're being validated more and more. Not that they had the answers, but I think that they were probably closest to trying to describe, what this might be.
And we got 10 minutes to wrap it up, so let's go with Leah Prime Time.
Awesome. So I'm going to ask another question, which is if there are any particular cases or subjects that you keep coming back to that have continued to captivate you over time.
Oh, really good question. Definitely the Nazis. What happened to the Nazis after World War II. I'm a big fan of Peter Levenda, and Joseph Farrell has written a lot of good books. So there's no question.
Levenda is amazing.
Who's that? Levenda?
Levenda? Yeah, I'm a big fan. Oh
gosh, Sinister Forces, which really ties.
He's a real one.
Yeah, I mean, I think he went to Bobby Kennedy's funeral when he was like a kid. He dressed up as a bishop and snuck into the church.
Wow.
What was the question again?
Oh, good. The question was whether or which cases or subjects you keep returning to, like the ones that continue to, enthrall you, basically.
So definitely the Nazis, definitely what was going on with the occult, the different occult societies, Theosophy, the Thule Society, Aleister Crowley, the Babylon, ritual that they did out in the desert. Some of our programs, what kind of programs did the U.S. government, put into place to mitigate, the effects of the phenomena? So MK Ultra, comes to mind. And then I would say one of my favorite UFO case itself is probably Lonnie Zamora. So this is out in, I think, 1965 in Socorro, New Mexico. It's just a really credible case. We have a credible eyewitness. You have ground traces. You have the Air Force is on site, within 20, 30 minutes. You have pictures. It's not far. It wasn't far from the White Sands missile range. Mm-hmm. So it was a great case. And I'm interested in it because I think it could have been an experimental aircraft. Or the aliens were trying to, they missed their landing spot at White Sands. But no, it's a very interesting case. And hopefully one day we find out, what he saw, if it was an experimental craft or if it was something outside.
Yeah, it's interesting because what they describe, the propulsion system doesn't sound like what we know to be the kind of tech that doesn't emit, IR light, that doesn't have thermodynamic properties that we can visually see. However, flying something that looks like a saucer is much, much more difficult from an aerodynamic, because now we're talking about an aircraft. And when we talk about something like a Tic Tac, or we talk about what Ryan Graves saw, we're not talking about an aircraft because it doesn't require interaction with the air to operate, meaning it doesn't need ailerons and rudders and elevators to go up and down. And so to fly a craft like that would be saucer shaped, which is what he described, a round disc, it's kind of would take like a propulsion system like a Harrier jet. It would be very noisy. You would see jet blasts coming down, and the amount of fuel that you would use to move something like that, people don't understand how much energy it takes to hover a helicopter. Well, if you're going to do that from White Sands to Socorro, or even Albuquerque to Socorro, man, it's going to be a flying gas tank. I don't know if there's going to be any room for anybody inside, knowing that these engines are using, 5,000 pounds an hour of gas or something like that. So anyway,
I was going to say, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I remember when I was in the military, they told me it was like $6,500 an hour in gas just to fly, an F-16. But back to the Socorro, there actually was a crater, a blast, like a small blast crater. So when that craft took off, so it did seem like sort of a hybrid craft. And I am in the school that I do take it for granted that we do have these technologies. I don't know how far advanced, but I think that is a big part of the cover-up. I absolutely do think that we have these technologies. If you go back to like T. Townsend Brown, I think that they discovered some of these technologies in the 20s, 30s, and 40s, but they were so revolutionary. How do you incorporate them into the world?
Navigating is another thing. You know, you hop on board a craft that is made by some sort of another intelligence. Okay, how do we navigate? You know, how do you modulate power in order to hover, in order to take off, in order to move vertically? There's a lot of things that we take for granted that you see an aircraft do, but if you board something that was created by another intelligence, you have to understand how to direct it to do these things. How do you navigate? Do they have Google Maps up there in 64? I mean, so there's a lot of things.
You go to
that's required.
Sorry, now I'm getting fired up. So you go to 1980. You go to the Cache Landrum. 1980 is actually the same month as Rendlesham Forest, and it was Vicky Landrum, Colby, and Betty Cash. They saw a craft. It was diamond shaped. It did have a thrust coming out of the bottom, and I think even Rick Doty said that was one of our ET craft that we had reverse engineered. And what's interesting about that case is that not only did they suffer from radiation, poisoning, they had terrible burns, but there was about 20 to 23 double rotor craft helicopters that were flying with that craft in Texas. So that was a big part. For me,
Corey, Corey, you be involved in operations. You know what it takes to launch 23 aircraft. If you have 23 flyable aircraft and 23 crews ready to board and take off at relatively the same time, when I've seen that happen at bases like Little Rock, you're talking that's weeks worth of coordination and maintenance to make that kind of an effort happen. So I hear that, and you know what? Rick Doty is a friend of mine. I like and respect him a lot, and we may disagree on some things, and also I would have to pick his brain on that specific case, which I actually talked to him 3 weeks ago, and he was just like, so what do you do for a living? And he's just kind of like, he was like interviewing me. So anyway,
he cut his mustache. I saw you guys give him a hard time for cutting his mustache, by the way.
I love it, man. I love some Rick Doty, but you know what? We got to get Tom in there, and then we'll go with Cabby goodbyes.
Yeah, I guess I just would offer like a domestic example of what you were talking about, like how we take some of these technologies for granted that we might have had them. We know that new B-51, the Spirit bomber that just came out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is an iteration of, some might say, the Horton's Flying Wing, but also
B2.
Northrop. Yeah, so Northrop was also developing it in 1947, and like aerodynamically, that craft was ahead of its time. The reason they weren't able to implement it, both Germany and us over here in the late 40s, was because they weren't able to keep it level until you were able to install a computer, from what I understand, like an algorithm that would keep it level as it would travel. So we are, most of the time, we're ahead of our time. We're waiting to implement that technology somehow in a way that makes it feasible. So I just thought it was a really cool contrast that, domestically that's an issue as well. But God, what if we had something that wasn't from here? We understood the benefits and how why it works the way it does, but we just can't implement it. Technologically, we're limited. So I think it's fascinating.
You know what I'm going to do with this is I'll have an offline. I'll have a three-way conversation, myself, Corey, and Tom, so we can talk about aviation aerodynamics, and I can sort of explain to you how that works, and then you'll understand why the flying wing is really, it's an aircraft. It's an airplane. It works off of Bernoulli's theorem. In order to fly something that doesn't have ailerons and an elevator, then that's when you start getting into something that doesn't follow Bernoulli's theorem of as velocity increases, pressure decreases. That's how flight occurs. So you and I can have a separate conversation, and I'll kind of tell you how amazing some of these craft are that people are seeing, and why I think that we haven't cracked that code yet of something that can fly in ignorance of in ignorance of Bernoulli's theorem and Newton's first three laws of motion. Debs, let's go with Cabby goodbyes, my friend.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, Corey, thank you so much for coming to talk to us and being one of my conference BFFs. Um, I, I think one thing I wanted to touch on because we all have like endearment towards you is that we all have different nicknames for you, and I wish we had time to go through them. My nickname for you
What's
is Jaquil because I mixed your names together.
I
I
love
wanted
it.
to give you a moment to let you know
Jaquil.
that, like, I just put your name together. Jaquil is your name in my, your nickname in my head. So we really just, you bring that out of us. We all want to be your buddy. We all want to chat with you.
Mhm.
You're a soft place to land, so to speak, on tough topics. So
Especially
thank
on
you.
right
And
here. Look at that.
yeah, and also just so you know, someone in chat, I think it was Nicole Nelson, came up with a good podcast name for you. I think it was like Current Curiosities, and I was like, Current
Yeah.
Curiosities with Corey would be a good podcast name.
That would be. And I'm unemployed right now, so maybe I should get on that sooner than later.
Do
So,
it.
yeah,
Try
You,
it,
thank you,
brother.
Deb. Thank you, Deb. And you
mhm.
are my conference BFF.
Yay! I win. Sorry, Tom. Sorry, Leah.
Prime time.
We can share.
Dude, so I'm delighted because I'm going to get to share one of my favorite stories in all of my exposure to ufology, which is when I was at the conference in October and you recognized me. I didn't recognize you. And you said, wow, so you're not Intel. And I, you were like, everybody thinks you're Intel. And I was like, nope, just unemployed, doing the UFO thing. And I just want to say, like, that was my first time kind of meeting anyone into these subjects, anyone into these interests. And the whole reason I went the whole weekend for the December event was because I had such a great time with you guys that one evening in October that I wanted basically to be around you and around everybody else. Deb, I got to meet DJ at the December event. So I totally agree with Deb when she said giving us a soft landing in this subject. Like, I just continue to respect and admire so much of the work and the your contributions to the discourse on Twitter.
Wait, but can you put your hands together for Anjali, our USAF home girl?
Oh, hey,
Surprise
Hey, Anjali.
party.
there's another friend of mine,
There
Anjali.
you
What's going on, sister?
Oh,
Hey!
I
What's
thought this
up?
was about Corey. Hi,
It
everyone.
is. All right, we're gonna get you right out. There you go. You bet. We're back to Corey. I want to see your new hairdo. Is that a crime? Come on.
No, it's not, but you're probably going to see more. So don't get attached to anything. You can vote if you would like on which one you like. I'm going through a series of them right now, trying to figure out
Okay.
what to do with this rag that's on my head. So
I'll
It looks
gladly
good,
take
Anjali.
any of the clip. I'll gladly take any of the clippings she has left over. I'm sorry, Corey. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say it looks good. It looks good. Anjali's a friend, and her hair looks fantastic. I put out a tweet recently about my wife getting, gray hair, and I'm a proponent of her not like dyeing it. So I think it looks great.
oh,
Okay.
well,
If I can
thank
say
you.
so.
Head back to the program. Hi.
Yeah.
Hello. Thank you so much for inviting me. And
Yeah.
happy birthday, Corey.
No, this is a surprise. This was a surprise. Okay, so Corey, this was a surprise party for you, not necessarily a birthday party. Unless you're having a birthday, then we will call it a birthday party.
I'm very confused.
Let's call it. My birthday is September 16th, but this is let's just call it like a celebration day. This is phenomenal. I get to be on cab with some of my favorite people. I get a surprise with Tom, with Anjali. So this is really phenomenal. And all of you know, my goal was to like always be anonymous. So I'm still amazed that I'm doing a podcast and people, know who I am.
Yeah,
So-
I'm really sorry that Anjali joined when the show was basically over. So we'll have to invite her back.
No worries. I really just wanted to stop in and just have a brief moment to talk about how amazing our brother Corey really is, and show gratitude for him being willing to risk, his personal and professional life, as most people think of it, to to be here with us and to tell his story and to seek out other people's stories and support them, and to bring together academia and science and experiencers and sightings all together in one place. Oh, and let's not forget ancient, religious texts.
Yeah.
I mean, he's bringing it all in from every direction, and wow, it's just been such a pleasure watching you bloom. So.
Thanks, Anjali. I got a short story about Anjali.
Go ahead, brother.
So I have been following Anjali just like the rest of the UFO world, and I try to withhold like judgment because I never have all of the information. So I always don't pass judgment. So was a fan, had followed her work, and I'm at the first conference. I'm just standing outside. I'm getting ready to go in, and just it's almost like I heard something over my right shoulder. I look over, and it's like Anjali. And I just stop and I'm like, hey, Anjali, introduce myself. We walk down the stairs together. We take a picture. We sat together for that first conference. I met her partner. And so we decided to do a Zoom sometime after, a few months after that. The day that we decided to do the Zoom, I went to her YouTube channel and she had a video up there that she did a couple of days after the conference. And what blew me away is that she was going to, I think, Montauk Point in New York. She unfortunately got into a car accident, and the two EMT, or there was an EMT on site, his name was Corey. And then she gets to the hospital, and there's a tech named Corey, and there's another nurse or person named Corey.
Yeah, so the nurse's name was Corey, the lab tech's name was Corey, and one of the radiology techs was Corey. It was crazy. I was like, I've got Corey's coming out of my ears this weekend. So
Anjali, was there a DJ in there anywhere? You're my UFO Twitter crush. I mean, come on. Never mind.
Are you familiar with DJ Funky Chef?
No.
Okay. Well, now you have no excuse.
Funky.
DJ Funky Chef. Okay, so he may or may not have come up that day.
The most important note of the day.
But
Yes,
back,
seriously. You will thank me. It's so amazing. So
I just wrote that down. But just to seal that off, Rick, when the day I was going to have just one-on-one with Anjali, I went and I saw this video, and she's telling a story about how she had all these Corys, and she's like, I also met another Corey, at this conference. So that's one of the synchronicities that things that you just kind of can't explain. And Anjali, seems to be a big part of it.
Oh, well, thank you. And I mean, obviously it was, excuse me, that happens sometimes, unfortunately. We obviously were meant to connect and get to know each other in this spiritual quest that we're all on here. So I'm just thankful that there's so many people. I'm thankful for all of you who are all here trying to do the same thing in our own way and to our own calling, for lack of a better way to really, our own antenna, I guess. Who knows?
Aha, the antenna. See, DJ, we can go so many places with these conversations.
It means we gotta. I don't want to get into how my name in college. I played 1 year of college football, and my nickname was Kazoo because I was so small. I had to pull the chin straps up real tight, and they look like I didn't have the trainer cut them, so they look like two antennas. And the coach said, "Hey, Kazoo, get over here!" So my college teammates all call me Kazoo. Anyway, let me get the cabbie goodbyes with Tom, and then I'm gonna have a goodbye, and then we're gonna talk. We're gonna do a part 2 with you. But go ahead, Tom. Estimate of the situation.
Dude, your intros are always so awesome. So Corey, you were at both of the events that I went to, and that was my introduction to UFO Twitter, so to speak, and the community as a whole. People that know me know I'm very shy. I have a lot of anxiety. I think the first one, it took me an hour to actually even interact with anybody, and I like to lurk in the shadows. You were so welcoming. You were so fun. You had to just have a drink. And then being part of the conversation with you, and I think Jay was over there. A couple other people were there. It just felt so oh my God, there's people out here really interested in this, and it speaks volumes because like I was just at a New Year's gathering, this year, and you mentioned UFOs, people are like interested for like the first two sentences, and then they're like, oh, okay, and they walk away. Whereas with you guys, it was absolutely not that. And honestly, like you're a really cool dude. Your nickname is probably Air Force One. It's so long ago.
Yeah, that's what's up.
But you've
Thank
also got like a crazy heart too, you know what I mean? Like it just resonates from you. So I think it's great that like you're in the community. I think it's great that like part of my introduction to the community was with you there. I can't wait for the next one. We're gonna get drunk. We're gonna have fun. We're gonna talk
Yeah.
about UFOs. And I'm not gonna promote anything, but I do have a copy for you. No one's seen this yet.
Oh,
So when you
the new one.
yeah, so when we do meet up at the next one, it's gonna be a fun time, man. It's really fun. Again, I'm really glad.
Tom, man, thank you for those kind words, my friend. And likewise, it was a pleasure to get to wrap it up with you, man. And I didn't pick up on any of the anxiety, so
Oh,
good.
the alcohol.
Yeah. No, Corey is incredibly memorable. The thing that people remember about me most at the conference is that I ordered the barbecue chicken and it looked excessively dry. That's people's resounding memory of me. I'm just kidding.
Oh man, I could have gave
Anyway.
you some of my brisket. It was good.
Or at least the fat, but at least the grizzle.
Yeah.
But I want to say for my part, before I address Corey, I want to say it's an honor to be part of this community. And I mean, sort of like all these people that take part in the show, come on the show, people like Tom, people like Angelio Double G, how long will I live? Who will I be? The G that I was, right? And obviously Leah and Deb, because the diversity of the group is what makes it so beautiful. You know, that people from all these different walks of life who have different takes come together for a common cause. This is really what it's all about. This is what you were talking about earlier. To you, Corey, like I was saying, we met. I introduced myself to you just before the event, I think, because Deb's told me she met you, told me you were going to be there. And I don't know, there was something that intrigued me, and I said, I think we need to get you on cab. And then so we said, okay, yeah, we'll go ahead and meet at the event. And yeah, you are an amazing dude with a lot of positivity. You're very, very inspiring. So I want to thank all of you for coming on. Obviously, we got two cabbies up there, but Tom for coming in and guest co-hosting, and Anjali, thank you. Namaste. Yeah.
Namaste.
And I look forward to talking. You, myself, and Corey will get together, talk some aviation stuff. And Corey, it's an honor to be your friend, and I look forward to a part 2 where we can dive into some more business.
Yeah, dive deep, man. The honor is all mine, honestly. I'm really thankful to be a part of this. It actually gives some meaning to the life of research, that the research that I put into. So I'm glad to be a part of it. And you guys are really some of the best people I've ever met. I love the camaraderie. I love the synchronicities all of us have. And you're right, Tom, it's hard to find two people in any given room who know anything about UFOs. So good place to be plugged in. I look forward to, whatever comes next.
Yeah. And I want to say for Debs, for my homie Leah Primetime, for Tom, for Anjali, this is DJ saying peace out. One love. We'll see you down the road. And as always, we're wondering what's up around the bend.
Thanks so.
Oh,
Thanks,
I thought
Leia.
that was it. Was that
Yeah.
it? Maybe that wasn't it. I don't know if I know how to do Nathan's thing. Oh, it's this thing right here. There it goes.